This bonus episode was brought to you by the Gakoids over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And now, on to the episode.
Initiation is now complete. You all have passed.
Right, this is it. And now for the skull. I'm gonna be a member of a secret society.
We are all as one. Blood brothers in the secret order of... the cassava melon?
It's fruit.
Kick it.
Greetings to all you poor, unfortunate souls. I mean, Gakoids. Welcome to the Cave of Mysteries that lurks just beyond Splat Attack, a 90s podcast that overflows into the slime-filled past. I'm your lucky bunk buddy, Brett.
And I'm your camp cult leader, Alex. And... Brett! What do you have in your brown leather sack today after spelunking in the deep, dark caves of Camp Anawanna?
Shh! It's supposed to be a secret! But since you're trustworthy, I guess I'll tell you. So, it looks like it's a sacred cow skull that I have. Once used by a Native American shaman hundreds of years ago to ward off evil spirits from plaguing Camp Anawanna. However, legend has it that a powerful traveling witch has been murdered by the shaman centuries ago, that the cursed the skull with her dying breath to bring misfortune to anyone who removed it from its cave.
Is that actually true?
I don't know, but what I do know is who's here to join us for this episode review today of Salute Your Shorts, The Cursed Skull. Let's welcome our three acolytes for the upcoming ritual, since apparently you're dressed for it and I already have the artifact that we need. So as our three acolytes rise into the screen to set up the incantation circle, it looks like we have our friends Dan from Vanilla Weiss and the Nostalgic Nerds podcast. We have our good buddy Justin Galosi and our returning co-host and friend from Big Orange Couch, Andrew. Come on in and join us in the bunk, guys. How are you three doing today?
What's up, guys?
Doing great. Feeling lucky.
Lucky, huh?
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little upset in the stomach. I had an awful waffle for breakfast this morning. Hasn't been sitting well with me.
Do we actually know what's in an awful waffle? Because last time I checked, it involves syrup and a tennis racket and maybe sandpaper.
In somebody's stomach.
Ooh. Well, you might need to take some Tums for today's episode because there are some gruesome parts.
Oh yeah.
So I got some questions for you guys before we jump into the episode review. Do you have any specific fond memories of Salute Your Shorts at all?
My fondest memories, I would say my favorite episode of all is the Counselor Budnick one. Mainly because Budnick was my favorite character, so I loved seeing him in charge for the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And one episodes like that also showed a different side to Budnick. Like, in that episode, any mean thing he did, he was ordered to do, but he actually had a good heart in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And, I like the ones like that. The Brownies for Thud Mackie one showed his nice side, too.
Yeah, it's nice to see different parts of characters that we normally associate with just like one single type of personality, and it's fun to see them stretch their acting skills in those scenarios. So I agree with you. Those are good episodes. What about you guys, Justin and Andrew?
I think my fondest memory of the series as a whole is just the time of day that I would watch the series. It feels like it was always on in the summer during the 1 o'clock to 3 or 4 o'clock stretch when it gets really hot outside, and like in the summer it would get too hot and I need to come inside for a little bit to cool down. It feels like it was always on TV. So every time it's summer, midday, and I'm at work or whatever, I feel like, I would give anything to just go back to the 90s and like laying in the cool house with a fan on and watching the show. This show and Hey Dude bring back that exact feeling of being too hot to be outside. So I come in and this is on. It was my comfort zone.
Yeah, I can picture that right now. I would do the same thing in the summer. Just watch some 90s Nick and kick back with fans blowing on me or air conditioning as close as possible just to get all the sweat off. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I had a similar experience. In this episode in particular, they're really talking about the heat. It's a really great summer episode, but this one also just in particular felt sort of bittersweet to me, even at the time. You can almost feel the show coming to an end, I guess, and it feels like it's headed there in this episode. So yeah, I don't know. This one always had kind of a special place for me.
Yeah, I find it interesting how this episode has a darker tone than some of the other episodes in season 2. And oftentimes I would compare it to Zeke the Plumber because it just seems very out of left field tonally. But they definitely do some interesting things in here in terms of playing with character roles and especially giving the girls more of a positive spotlight in this case, where they compare and contrast the two scenarios of how each of the bunk campers deal with the cursed skull once it's within their range.
Yeah, it was like the first episode where all three of the girls at once were the central characters. There were other episodes where they would individually be the central character, and that was like the only one I can recall where all three of them at once were the central characters.
Yeah, they definitely acted as a team in this, both in conflict and resolution.
And it really got you to know more in depthly about the girls and what they were really like and everything. And it was the first time we'd really seen that kind of chemistry between them.
Yeah, it's nice to see that. And I know there are quite a few season 2 episodes where we see more of their character development unfolds, so we see more of the nuances of their likes, their dislikes, how they relate to certain characters more than others, and how some of them really come out of the shell, like Donkey Lips, for example, just to kind of show their true colors in everyday camp life versus just being another camper who happens to be here in the bunk.
When I was a kid, I remember how disturbed I was by the end of that episode. The part where you see all 4 of the boys bandaged up in the nose, implying that Ugg took a pair of scissors and cut all 4 of them.
Oh, yeah. Hurts my nose thinking about it.
Yeah.
Got any more bright ideas, Budnick? Yeah, stick it.
Something about the image of the authoritative figure, the grown adult, using a deadly weapon on 4 of his underage campers, that really disturbed me when I was a little kid.
Yeah, it makes you wonder the ethics and the ramifications of punishing kids back then. It seemed a little more abrasive and I guess personalized than what you would assume would happen today. What do each of you remember most about this episode?
That was one of the big things I remembered. That, and before that, them trying to cut a hair out of his nose, and then you see the bloody tissue in his nose, implying that they cut his nose by mistake. I remember that really stuck with me, that whole scenario. I had never seen anything that disturbing on the show before, and I also remember that scene where the first bad thing happens, and which of the girls said the skull, it's starting, and then you see that series of mishap after mishap happening to them.
Yeah, that montage where just a bunch of bad stuff happens. What about you, Justin?
I feel like this episode has always kind of been linked to the Treasure of Sarah Madre to me. It always kind of had the same kind of feel as far as the artifact and Donkey Lip's reaction to the objects, and I guess what Andrew was saying about the tone, the season 2 tone, that makes a lot of sense now that I'm thinking about the comparisons, because I've always kind of associated the two together, but there's something a little bit different about the season 2 episodes in contrast to the season 1 to me.
Yeah, it seems a bit more serious, a bit more involved, and less innocent and la-di-da. maybe that's just me, but it seems like, okay, now we're going deeper now that we've established all these characters for our audience.
That's a fair assessment. I kind of feel like season 1 was more like adolescence, like Goonies kind of style, and season 2 they're starting to become teenagers, and the tone starts changing a little bit, where it's a little bit more, I don't know, a little different age-wise, group-wise.
Right, yeah. More into the teenage demographic.
Although Budnick was always sort of ahead of his time when it came hormonally, I feel like out of all the characters, in one episode, didn't he make a subliminal reference to a porno when he said, like...
Oh, the old dirty magazines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, there's nothing in here except a bunch of dirty old magazines!
Dirty old magazines? Or old dirty magazines?
Come on.
I think you guys are onto something with Zeke the Plumber and Sarah Madre. Like, this feels like the third part of the
they're all
horror
connected.
trilogy or something. But I think the thing that has stuck with me the most is the cave. The girls in the cave, like around, and all the junk surrounding them. It's just such an interesting setting and like off camp, so it's a little strange. That just always stuck with me.
Yeah, aside from like Sponge Goes to the Movies, we really don't see any other instances where they're removed from the main camp setting. So that really adds to the mystique and the I guess intensity of the subject today.
That is true. They did mostly stay on campus in every episode.
The thing that I remember the most of this episode is it felt like this particular episode had stakes, because most of the other shows, they're usual adolescent hijinks, and it's fun. And there was a couple of occasions in which they were trying to sneak away, and they're being afraid of getting caught by Ugg. Ugg is usually the stakes at hand. This time,
Rest in peace.
Yeah, yes. This episode, even Ugg is afraid, and they're afraid of what could potentially happen, all the way up to death. So there really felt like genuine stakes, and this episode, I think, was the only episode that I really felt like everyone needs to get together as a group and get rid of this thing now. It was as close to an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that Anawanna could ever be.
Aside from Zeke the Plumber, but yeah.
Aside from Zeke the Plumber, yeah.
Part of that trilogy that could go further if we had a third season.
Yeah.
Although Zeke the Plumber was more comical. I mean, I know a lot of people were inadvertently afraid of it, but I feel like Zeke the Plumber was meant to be more comical. Like, the skull was meant to actually be rather dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some genuine pathos with the way they presented the skull.
Yeah, I think for Zeke the Plumber, it's more of a half and half split. Like, the ambience and the introduction of Zeke is very ominous and creepy, but once you see him interact with more of the kids and mess with their dreams, like with Michael and Telly, and how he's like dancing with his plunger and that guy get out of this ball scene, it's like, okay, now he's just playing with him like Freddy Krueger. As ZZ said, the custodian of Freddy Krueger, or something to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
What is this guy, the Freddy Krueger of custodians?
Have you guys ever encountered any cursed or forbidden objects in real life? If so, what would you do to get rid of them to break their curse?
I've never actually came across an object, but there have been times in the past where I've literally thought that, like, somebody put a hex on me, where I would have one horrible mishap after another. Like, I remember in 2014, literally, like, every couple weeks I was having worse and worse car trouble, car disasters and stuff, and I remember calling up my mother and asking her if any of her friends know black magic and could reverse a hex for me. I was like, I swear somebody's put a hex on me.
So you ended up getting rid of it, or is there something specific that made it go away?
Luckily, I eventually saved up enough to get a different car, and once I got a new car, everything went away. But yeah, that car I had was a nightmare, and it kept breaking down in the middle of the road, and I thought that somebody put a curse on me or something.
Yeah, it goes to show you that you got to be careful with anything used because of the history associated with it that none of us may be familiar with. But it's like cars, houses, or even hand-me-downs or gifts from other people.
Now, I'm not going to go into the full story a second time, but Brett will be familiar with this one, the Gakoids. Those of you who will watch the Hey Arnold Ghost Bride episode, I had shared a story about going to an abandoned house. And this actually is part 2 of that in a way, although part 2 is far less interesting. I had another friend who we played this for, and he wanted to go check the house, or she wanted to go check the house out. And nobody else wanted to go again. So I took her and we went, and I found a light switch in the shed. So I turned, or the stable. So I turned the light switch on. It still had electricity, so it was far less creepy. And I found this, there was a workbench just full of old trinkets and junk and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm gonna take one of these things home. I don't care. Nobody's here. So I ended up taking some slip of paper that had handwriting and stuff on it. And it was hard to read because it was, not to say that I can't read cursive, but this is like a broken cursive where you could hardly, it was almost like doctor's handwriting. It was really, really bad. And I kept that for a long time. And we had joked, now watch, we'll go home and something awful will start happening at the house. Nothing ever did, but we joked about it. Anytime something bad would happen, the AC would go out, or we'd lose power during an electrical storm. It's the paper, burn it. But no, that was as far as that ever went.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything cursed or experiences like that off the top of my head, although I have gotten rid of items that I received as gifts from past girlfriends, so I wouldn't keep having haunting, traumatic nightmares of them. So I've burned or disposed of all that stuff since then.
That counts, I think.
Yeah.
I'm kind of somewhat sad to say I don't think I've ever had any like haunting type experiences in any like objects or places. Yeah.
First time for everything. You could always go to a cemetery with us.
I'm not against it. I don't necessarily think it's not real. I just I don't know. I've been waiting for it, but it hasn't happened yet.
I'll have to pay a visit to Old Man Corcoran.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you two? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Justin, do you have any?
Yeah, I have had a really vivid ghost experience, but I couldn't get into it on here. It would take an hour or two to talk about, but it was pretty wild. But as far as cursed things, I want to keep it as a no, so I'm not going to jinx it. But up until this point, I have not experienced anything, and I don't want that to change.
Sounds good.
I'm kind of superstitious, so like this will be a good episode for me.
Yeah, this one in our upcoming verses, the Aru Monsters versus Ren and Stimpy one is also superstitious based, so it'll give us a good idea of what it's like to be on the other side of luck, and then try to find a way to turn it around before it like sticks around for too long.
Is that the Tuesday the 17th Ren and Stimpy episode?
I don't remember the date specifically, but it's definitely coming up, episode 43. So check that out when it comes out. Any other questions anyone has before we jump in?
Yeah, what are the details of the episode?
The deets? I got the deets. So Salute Your Shorts, The Cursed Skull aired in season 2, episode 5, which was episode 18 overall. And its original air date was June 10th, 1992. It was written by Steve Slavkin, creator of the show, Douglas Tuber, and Tim Mayle, and was directed by Gino Tenescu. And the synopsis begins as follows. The episode opens with Pinsky, ZZ, and Donkey Lips all hanging out at the lakeside pier trying to catch fish. Pinsky and ZZ rag on Donkey Lips by saying the worms in their tin can could have been eaten various famous figures in history. Donkey Lips is so revolted by the thought that those worms could have been in his fish sticks at the lodge the other night that he straight up gets up and walks away in frustration. ZZ and Pinsky continue joking around, fading into the intro theme song. After the intro, we head into the girls' bunk to see Dina and Telly arguing while ZZ dumps her backpack full of stuff on the floor. Dina gets upset that ZZ used her lipstick to create a drawing, while Dina lashes out at Telly for leaving her sweaty gym socks around the bunk. Suddenly, ZZ pulls a wishbone out of her pile of stuff and asks the girls to make a wish. Dina breaks it, continues to escalate the argument, and a pile of clothes is thrown on top of ZZ. The three just can't seem to get along. Meanwhile, back at the boys' bunk, Budnick places a cow skull that he found at the edge of camp above the entrance before ZZ enters. ZZ is mortified by the sight of the doorway adornment, knowing there's a dark past tied to it, despite Donkey Lips doubting its dark powers. ZZ elaborates on how the skull will bring bad luck to anyone who touches it, and also how the legends say that if one fails the Native American initiation ceremony of blood and fire in the presence of the skull, they'll kill you. Undeterred by ZZ's warning, Budnick decides to start a secret society of the skull to recreate these ancient traditions at camp. Once the boys agree, Budnick tells ZZ she can't see any of their official business, and she ominously replies, "Don't worry. If you're keeping that thing, I don't want to be anywhere near you." Just to start a discussion after seeing these first couple of scenes, have you ever had any conflicts with roommates or family living with you that escalate out of control over the littlest of things?
Yeah, my first, quite a few of my roommates, my first roommate, he had like the worst hygienic habits, and he also would often forget to put my plates away when he would be eating a meal in his room, and then all of a sudden I'd be low on plates, and I'd then take a peek in his room and I'd see like 6 dirty dishes piled on top of each other.
Classic roommate troubles.
Yeah, he used to always take my food without asking to. Like, I would come home and I'd find all my lunch meats opened and picked at all the time.
Blah. Justin, Alex, Andrew?
Yeah, I lived with 3 of my best friends my senior year of college. Yeah, you can be best friends with somebody and love them no matter what, but day after day after day. So I have just a quick story, kind of going off what Daniel was saying. So we all rotated each week who was up for dishes for the week. Well, my one friend, which I won't name, if he listens to this, he'll know it was him. He would never get the memo. It's his turn. We would be like reminding. Well, we were out of almost everything in the house was in the sink the week of his turn, and I came back from class, and he was eating cereal with milk off of a plate, using a spatula to push it into his mouth rather than doing the dishes.
Oh my gosh!
That was
lazy.
That was like, it was like the Cold War until that point. That was like, okay, that is not acceptable. You're gonna do your dishes, and everybody kind of got on him about that. But there's things you eat at each other whenever you're living together, but like that's just one thing. I just still think about that. I'm like, I give him props. That was like, he could have did the dishes, or he could have found the last utensils in the house to have cereal, and he chose that. But that didn't go over well with the rest of us.
Yeah, I would feel the same way if I were there.
Yeah, I've been pretty good about avoiding bad living situations. I've been around like enough people that have been been living with bad enough other people that I don't know. I've been very careful, and I'm always the one that's like, I don't know. I feel like I've been the adult, I guess, in my living situations where I'm very good about keeping all my stuff very clean. Like I have my dishes done practically before I eat. Yeah, I don't know. I've been good about that.
I am the youngest of 2 brothers, which has been mentioned many times on the podcast, but almost every time I've mentioned it, it's been in a positive light because I have looked up to my older brother, but that's also the problem. It's an older brother. There's a lot of times in which we've argued and over the dumbest of things, and escalated to a point that there was no turning back from, and we knew we were all going to be in trouble. But there was one instance in particular I recall where it did end in a pretty bloody situation, but it wasn't on purpose, which is even stranger. I had a terrible temper when I was a kid. I got mad over anything, and my brother loved to push that button and to see how mad he could make me. And there were times when he would goof around and I couldn't tell if he's being serious or if he's being goofy, because he's so good at that. It's almost Chevy Chase like. You can't tell when he's joking and when he's serious. And there was one night, I was very young. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And my mom would always read me a bedtime story, but this particular night, my older brother was going to. I'm standing on the edge of the bed. My brother's standing in front of the bed looking at my bookshelf, and I'm pointing at a book. And it was one of those golden books. So it was all on the side, and all you saw was that gold stripe all the way across, because I had like 6 or 7. I had like 10 or 12 of them. So I'm pointing, and I don't know the name of the book. Try that one, try that one, try that one. And he's looking around like, which one are you talking about? And I'm 4 or 5 years old. I don't have the vocabulary to express what it is that I'm wanting him to pick up. I'm just pointing, and he's getting frustrated with me. I think he's messing with me, and I threw my hand forward to point, very matter of fact, and he happened to turn right as I was throwing my hand forward, and my knuckles, not my index finger, but the knuckles of my bottom 3 fingers clocked him right in the jaw. My index finger went right past his mouth and got my knuckle of my middle finger caught his top front teeth. And I knocked them really solid. To this day, being a full-grown adult, those 2 teeth are stained yellow from where I had clocked him as a 5-year-old. And I didn't get a bedtime story that night, and Mom thought I did it on purpose, and he thought I did it on purpose. And I'm like, I didn't do it on purpose, but I'm a 5-year-old kid trying to stay out of trouble, and of course nobody's going to believe me.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story I had with my little brother around Christmas time, where he was playing with a toy in my parents' bedroom, and my dad sent me up to go get him, to bring him down to the Christmas Eve party to hang out with the rest of the family. But he was so adamant about not going because he was like just enveloped by this toy, like in his own little world. And he kept fighting me as I was picking him up, like literally squirming and all that stuff. And as I was trying to take him out into the doorway, he happened to like hit his head on the side, like the corner of the wall, which has like a metal reinforcement in it. And of course that split open his skull. He started bleeding. He got taken to the hospital, and I got a really bad spanking and punishment for it, when I was not trying to hurt him at all. I was just trying to bring him downstairs and do what I was told. So I can relate to the little brother incident where you're charged as guilty even though you're innocent. Mm-hmm. Luckily, he forgave me after that, but yeah.
I don't think my brother still has. No, you did it on purpose. No, I didn't.
Tell him to watch this episode, then he'll see the truth.
Well, I'm an only child, but I am a family therapist. So if you guys want to get your relatives together, we can do it later.
Yeah,
we can unpack some of this with your families.
Oh, that'd be great. But aside from therapy, let's get back to Camp Anawanna, shall we? So over at the lodge, ZZ continues building suspense over the skull by mentioning a camper named Ross Lexinger getting hit by lightning in 1972 when he picked up the skull. Nearby, Telly catches wind of her bunkmate's tall tale and dismisses her claims as superstitious. Dina butts in to stoke the fires of tension among them. Ugg, meanwhile, crashes their party with a bang, literally, when he sets up a ladder to fix a light bulb. ZZ asks when their new bunk assignments will be official, while Telly trips and spills her lunch on herself, mocking the curse of the skull. ZZ leans over the table and proclaims the skull's curse has started. Cut to a montage of multiple unlucky instances of things happening around camp, with some jovial yet mischievous music to accompany it. Once Telly causes Ugg's van a flat tire with her archery arrow, he prepares to punish her, but she defends herself, claiming the cursed skull is conjuring all these unlucky circumstances around camp. Ugg's eyes widen, and she immediately books it to the boys' bunk. Cut to Ugg looking at the skull in awe with Budnick, warning him to get rid of it, knowing full well that the skull's power, what the skull's power is capable of. Budnick denies Ugg's wishes once Ugg leaves, ripping his shirt on a nail on the way out. Budnick covers the skull with a pillowcase and hides it in his trunk. So what are your thoughts on the lore behind this cursed skull, now that we have a little bit of exposition from ZZ?
I believe that it was very well done. I think that basically it took a whole supernatural turn on the show that we weren't used to seeing before. Usually most of what we saw on the show was pretty straightforward, pretty of this earth, but the whole concept behind the cursed skull was something that actually got you thinking a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the mystery behind it.
I also think it was a really smart move to have ZZ tell the story, because of anyone there outside of her and Sponge, they're like the only two no nonsense characters. Everyone else you could almost see as using this as some kind of a ploy to some extent. Those two don't do that kind of thing, and especially ZZ. She's got this very one with nature, want to be everyone's friend, and then the moment, because it's very rare when she becomes very, very sincere, in fact adamant about something. So to have this lore come from her really gives the story some gravitas.
Yeah, it's like she's the representative of nature here and saying don't mess with what shouldn't be touched.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Telly, she's a generational athlete. We haven't seen anything like that. Modern day LeBron James. She fell on her back. She missed an arrow shot and shot the van. I don't know how else you can explain that bad of happenstance without a curse. I mean, she would never miss that shot.
Agreed.
It's not my fault, Ugg.
I'm not an idiot, Radford. You're gonna pay for this.
Ugg, listen, Ugg, no, wait. Ugg, it's the cursed skull from the sacred cave.
Yeah, I really like what they do with this. I like the item. It's a cool, it's sort of scary on its own without the curse even. And it feels like really the perfect thing for the campers to play off of. Like all of them have their own curse going on. It's just like ripe for the picking, kind of.
Yeah, it feels very personalized. Like the skull with whatever powers it has is like it searches for the weaknesses of each of the characters and exploits them so that they are 100% miffed by it, and they need to be aware of the impact that it has on them so they can know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
I think the item of the skull might have affected me differently had I not grown up in Western Pennsylvania, where you go into anybody's living room and there's deer and bear and stuff all over the walls. At that age, though, I don't think I knew too many people that hunted, and I would, that's an item I wouldn't want to touch, but I was acclimated to people having those hung in their house, and I never thought about them being cursed.
Yeah, I used to see them when I lived in a more rural area of Connecticut as a kid. Some people hang them up on their barns as like either a decoration or a way to like ward off evil spirits as like a means of protection. So it's interesting to see this symbolism of a dead cow skull used in a more superstitious way. Well, not more superstitious, but like kind of in the same vein of how some people treat it in real life.
Yeah, my family, I've got some rednecks in my family, and I live in Kentucky. I'm gonna have some rednecks in my family, and I grew up with some of my aunts and uncles, much like Justin had said, where they had mounted deer heads and things like that. It always was unsettling to me. I'm reminded of Wild Wild West with Will Smith just going, "That's a man's head."
I give you Morton's last image.
That's a man's head.
I've felt that way every time. That's a cow's head. That's a deer's head. But whenever I saw a skull as opposed to just a mounted head, that always unsettled me, no matter where it was. Even if it was at like a Tex-Mex restaurant and I saw one mounted on the wall there, I didn't want to sit. I would throw a fit if I had to sit near that thing. I had to sit on the other end of the restaurant. So yeah, something very creepy and ominous about a skull of anything.
Yeah, especially since it's separated from the rest of its body. We don't know anything about why this skull is at camp when you'd expect it to be on farmland. Like, where's the rest of it? Is there like a headless cow ghost roaming Camp Anawanna as well that we haven't seen yet? Move it! Back at the lodge, Sponge is sculpting a model of Donkey Lips posing as the Statue of Liberty when Dina and the girls interrupt their activity. ZZ urges Donkey Lips to get rid of the skull, but despite the increased bad luck around camp, Donkey Lips refuses to compromise their newly formed secret society, which was briefly mentioned in the first episode of the series. Dina insists the skull is doing this, but Sponge sets out to prove her wrong by doing a series of superstitious actions in the lodge, contrary to belief. The moment after they agree it couldn't be the skull causing bad luck, the chandelier Ugg was working on earlier suddenly falls on Sponge's table, crushing it in the process. Enough is enough. The girls band together to remove the skull from the boys' bunk and return it to the cave from whence it came. Along the way, we see Ugg lounging in a folding chair, cooling himself off with a cold drink. Classical music plays in the background as the girls argue more and more intensely during their trek to the cave. Are there any things in life you've ever been superstitious of, guys?
Yeah, I mean, just the normal tropes. Like, I don't know how much I believe in stuff, but I don't want to jinx it. So I avoid the cracks and walking under ladders and stuff. In a fun way, though, I've always kind of been superstitious with sports, where I'm standing, what I make for the game to eat, what I'm doing. I'll change things if the game's not going as I want it to. I'll change how I do stuff. Maybe I need a different hat. It rarely works in my favor, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it, because then it's all on me. I know that it would be my fault. So in a serious way, I guess I'm kind of superstitious, but not really in a serious way either too. Like, I feel like life is hard enough. Why push my luck? So yeah, I don't get too anxious about it or anything, but yeah, I definitely don't. I try to not make things harder on myself than it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I guess occasionally when I was kids, I would just playfully like go around ladders and step on cracks. But nowadays, I don't really think about doing it too much. But I have been more superstitious as I got older about talking about my creative projects before actually doing them, because I found time after time when that happens, it's like because of the hype or the response to what you're doing, it almost like sets up this impossible expectation to get over to actually make meaningful progress on it, that it somehow kills the project. So that's why whenever I pursue something or try to do some art or write something, I keep myself tightly lipped until it actually happens, so that there's no way it can be screwed up. Same thing with like how my parents asked me, well, where are you going to move next? Or what are your plans for life, 5-year plan? And they're just so used to asking those things because that's what, you know, parents commonly do in life. But I'm just like, hey, wait, I'll tell you when I'm ready. I'm not jinxing myself, because as soon as I tell you, I'm not going to end up going there, even though I'm trying to make plans to go there.
Daniel, how about you? Any times when you find yourself to be superstitious?
I mean, not of things such as black hats or ladders, but I will say I'm a firm believer in jinxing myself. So whenever something's going right, I never mention it out loud, because I'm always worried that if I say what's going right, all of a sudden it's going to take a 180 turn. Mm-hmm. And if something is going wrong and then stops, I'm afraid to mention that, oh good, it's finally stopped, because I'm worried that the second I say that, whatever bad things are happening will start up again.
Andrew?
I have a slight superstitious impulse, but I try, I think, to not give into it so much.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I just, like, I have a tendency to want to, like, think about like jinxing things or not jinxing things or something, but really, I feel like just engaging with that is sometimes the thing that causes problems, or causes things to not go smoothly. Just
Right.
you kind of like making that happen. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I was just sorry, real quick, then I'll jump to you, Alex. I was just thinking about it, but I've also been in scenarios where I have to be very careful about my language, because if I'm like casually negative or something like that, it could also end up coming back to bite you. And it makes me think a lot about fortune cookies, like if they actually would come true or not. And it makes me go back to that one from Rocko's Modern Life, the fortune cookie episode, where it's like, bad luck will infest your pathetic soul for all eternity. I'm like, wow, if you read that enough times, you might start to believe all that misery will be dumped upon you by the cosmos.
It's only a stupid fortune cookie. You can't take these things seriously.
Bad luck and misfortune will infest your pathetic soul for all eternity.
Yeah, for sure.
I had also, again, made mention during the ghost story that I was talking about for the Ghost Bride that I'm very much a Scully. It's not that I disbelieve, but it's that there's usually another rational thing that's at play. And that's almost always been my mindset, which is unusual since I'm a children's pastor. But I would always look for a more rational thing. But I've always been fascinated with ghosts and monsters and lore and things like that. And I remember as a kid, I used to check out books on superstitions. I'm curious as to where people have heard these things and what they actually mean. Are they real? Is there any authenticity to them? And but I've never really been a superstitious person. In fact, if I was anybody in this episode, I would be Sponge, because I was that person who would intentionally walk under the ladder. I had a black cat. Ended up breaking a mirror one day, not on purpose, completely on accident. But I knew some kids in school that if this was them, they'd be freaking out right now, worried about the superstitions. And I was, we'll see, and nothing ever really formed from it. So I am not a superstitious person in the slightest, and I do believe that there is some credence to the idea that if you allow yourself to believe these kinds of things, then they will more than likely manifest themselves. But I don't have any theory behind. I don't have any proof behind that. Just pure theory. But no, not being superstitious has served me well in my day.
I won! I'm Mr. Lucky.
Yeah, I used to be superstitious on my birthday every year when I was a kid. I really did believe that if you silently made a wish, it would come true. And every year I was severely disappointed.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious where that origin came from, because it's like everyone's gateway superstition to see what that supernatural world's like of, oh, I can't jinx it because if I say it out loud, it won't come true.
That's interesting that Alex brought up he would be Sponge. I'm wondering who everybody thinks that they would be in this episode. I think personally, if this was going on, I would have been Michael. I would have been gone a year ago.
You get the gold star for the episode, Justin. That was great. Yeah, I was going to say Sponge too, because I tend to be more on the rational side, but I really appreciate Zizi for her connection to nature and just being empathetic towards everyone and being respectful of the history of the camp.
Yeah, I would probably be Donkey Lips in the sense that I would be freaked out by it all, but at the same time I would go with it anyway, for the acceptance, just to be part of something. So that's how I am on a regular basis. I'm somebody who, even if something freaks me out, if it's something that the rest of the group is doing, I'll go along with it, even if it's out of my comfort zone.
Well, there's strength in numbers, so it's not like you have to face the black magic alone if you do stick around with them.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Pinsky, just like somewhere in the middle, like not going along with it, sort of, but unsure of what's going on. Just for the fun of it, maybe.
Yeah, or see how far you can go along before you can't take it anymore and begin to question the efficacy of it. Like, I know he does that in a scene that we'll talk about later involving mud and jumping in a circle.
Yeah.
And salute your shorts question, because when this episode started, Donkey Lips was getting grossed out. Is that the only time Donkey Lips has ever been grossed out at anything in the series?
I think so.
As far as I can recall.
Yeah, same.
And we've seen, all of us have seen the series multiple times, so
yes.
It's something I don't really think about.
Yeah.
That does it! I'm off of seafood. I'm sticking with hot dogs.
You know what they put in hot dogs?
I don't want to hear it.
Hey, Florence Nightingale!
William Shakespeare. You guys are sick, I know that?
Yeah, he was intrigued by a dead bug in one episode.
Sounds like him.
Yeah.
Well, back at the boys' bunk, their initiation ceremony has begun, with Sponge, Donkey Lips, and Pinsky all decked out in togas, while Budnick approaches the line shrouded in a brown cloak. Returning to the girls, they finally arrive at the cave, where they place the skull on a rock past the piles of junk lining the walls. ZZ prays for the curse to be lifted, but before the trio leaves, thunder rumbles, indicating they'll be stuck in the cave until dawn. Cut back to the boys' bunk, while the boys are hopping in a circle, while Budnick watches. The boys are fed up with these silly initiation tasks, but then Budnick suggests their final test to snip the nose hair from Ugg and bring them back to him to complete the ceremony. Bouncing back to the cave, the girls continue arguing, shouting, and just all around complaining about how much they hate each other. Once the three settle down, ZZ uncontrollably hiccups, crossing her eyes to help it stop. The girls all share a good laugh, reminiscing on how they left a bug in Ugg's soup one time, causing him to make a loud crunch upon eating it. So what are your thoughts on how the boys and girls each play out their different scenes relative to the skull?
I like the fact that the girl, like I was saying earlier, I like that it really got us to in-depthly learn about the girls and see a chemistry with them that we had never seen before in the series, not with all three of them together like that. And with the guys, I thought it was cool to see them all on like the mischievous side. I know it happened at least like once before, but it was always a special treat to see them all mischievous, team up and be mischievous together.
Yeah, there's a real sense of teamwork going on in each of these scenarios that you don't get to see too often, because typically in a Salute Your Shorts episode, it's like one or two kids of the campers that we all know and love have a problem, and the others try to help them solve it throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And then occasionally Ugg is just in there to give some advice or create a roadblock for them to solve their problem. Here it's more like, well, they just kind of diverge into different factions, and one of them, really leans into the dark lore and the mystery of the cursed skull and really creates like a cult setting around it and ritual, while the other is heeding ZZ's warning and taking it seriously enough that they don't want to experience any more bad luck or misfortune to themselves after having experienced just a small taste of it. So they do the responsible thing and take it back to the cave, hoping that will, reverse the curse for the camp. So it really drives both of the groups of campers into opposite directions of the spectrum in terms of how they interpret it from their perspective. And I find that fascinating that we have the contrast here, because they both lead to different outcomes, but also bring both groups together at the very end.
I remember getting that song stuck in my head that they were chanting while they were in the togas. I would annoy my brother by walking around being like, oh, yo, yo,
Rio, yo ho, oh Rio, yo ho, oh Rio, yo halt.
Mm-hmm. Which was straight out of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But I really think the writing for this was very clever because you, as Brett was pointing out, you get the two different factions and the two opposite ends, but that also makes for a good passing of the third act, because you have one side that's fun and mischievous, whereas the other half starts very dark and ominous, but the two end up switching, where now with what had happened with Ugg, now you're, like Daniel had pointed out, it becomes very dark and twisted very quickly, whereas on the other side with the girls, it actually becomes genuine and heartfelt, and that's very, very clever writing. And another thing that I really appreciate, which if anybody had seen our top Salute Your Shorts episodes that also had Justin, Venus DeMalo had pointed out that they filmed the cave scenes
Batman, yeah,
there at that cave, so that was a cool thing.
Is that all the leftover junk from the Batcave? Like, he just was done using it after the show, and they're like, yep, dump it here, we can't find a dumpster, oh well. Makes you wonder.
Find some shark repellent bat spray in the middle of the cave.
Hand me down the shark repellent bat spray.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Well, I think that's what Dina tripped over. She probably tripped over a batarang or something.
Yeah.
I really do like how the story flips like that. But I they do it in such a way, it's like you don't even notice that with the girls, they're like slowly forgetting about the skull kind of altogether, and the boys are like becoming more and more interested in their what they think is the skull, you know.
Yeah, it's a natural progression. It doesn't feel forced.
Yeah, it was cool to see him so obsessed with it. It was like the forbidden fruit for them. The fact that Ugg didn't want him keeping it around only made them obsessively want it more.
Yeah, they definitely gave in to temptation there to see if they could harness its power rather than be affected by it.
Yep.
Well, getting back to the bunk again. Meanwhile, the Secret Society of the Skull recounts their game plan at the lodge before they snip the nose hairs from Ugg's nose. Tensions rise as the storm brews. Back at the cave, the girls are entertaining themselves in front of a campfire, dressed in costumes picked from the junk piles. Zizi's a princess, Dina's a fashionista, and Telly is a Viking warrior. Suddenly, Dina slips and falls, cutting her knee on a rock. Telly is repulsed by the sight of the blood, but also by the possibility that her friend is hurt. Dina consoles Telly, leading the three to sharing personal stories around the campfire, including who their first kiss was. Zizi confesses Richie Garber was hers, and it happened after the social. Cut back to the boys returning to the bunk, caked with mud from head to toe, all eagerly awaiting their initiation. Just as Budnick reveals the skull for the final step of the ceremony, everyone is baffled to see a cassava melon with sticks for horns sticking out of it. Not a moment sooner, Ugg shows up with a tissue-filled bloody nose and the boys' scissors, ready to dish out their punishment. So, were there any instances in your lives that brought you closer together with friends or family during a trip outdoors?
I would say for me, it was my early college days when I first moved to South Florida, because I had never been in a hurricane before, and so being forced to bunk up with a bunch of my classmates for a few days without power, without electricity or anything, we spent the whole night bonding the way that the girls bonded in this episode, where we just spent like all night asking each other personal questions and truly getting to know each other inside and out.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it made me almost wish that there were more hurricanes that hit.
Yeah, why do we need a catastrophe to bring people together? It makes me wonder sometimes.
I never had a specific event, anything big that happened, but camping or being at the mercy of the land, or anytime there's vulnerability, I think brings you closer to people that you're with. having adversity and experiencing that with somebody else, I feel like creates a bond. You know, if you're one of a few people that experience something, that always seems to make things a bond that you'll always have with that person. So I think being vulnerable and being at the mercy of the wilderness, it sets you up in a position to really bond with somebody.
Yeah, you get those shared memories through the experiences, and you know that sticks with you if it was a particular challenge that you managed to overcome together.
I have a handful of fun adventures in my backyard. I used to have some friends over all the time to spend the night when I was in junior high. But something I was always frustrated with was we have to be quiet because we're right next to mom and dad's room, and we'd be up till 3-4 o'clock in the morning playing video games. And I knew we kept waking up mom and dad, but they knew we weren't trying to. And then one day I had the idea of, what if we spent the night outside? My mom and dad have there's woods behind our house. My dad has a separate garage. We could take all our video games out there, and we could play out in the garage. We could sleep out in the tent. We could go out in the woods. We could run around outside, and we don't have to worry about bothering anybody. And we could stay up as late as we want and be as loud as we want. And mom and dad had agreed, and that's exactly what we did. And our favorite thing was it was almost like capture the flag in the dark in the woods, but it was an old green Luke Skywalker lightsaber where the extending part had broken off. So that was our trophy that we had to find. And there's one person who's a guard, and we had recorded just the opening riff of Jukebox Hero from Foreigner over and over and over, had it on a cassette tape, and as soon as the person who was on guard knew there was somebody coming, we'd play that song, and we'd play it really loud to mask stepping on the leaves. And there would be two other people with water guns, but these particular ones were the ones that had a light on it. So whenever you would shoot it, it would be a red light, and you could see the water spraying. So it just looked like a red laser or a blue laser. And each one was trying to get closer to the flag and take it without getting shot, and trying to be as sneaky as possible. It was the closest we could come to doing an outdoor Metal Gear Solid before Snake Eater came out. But things like that we just did all night long. We did them several nights that summer, about 3-4 nights throughout the whole summer, and we will never forget those crazy, ridiculous adventures. I think we found a deer one year, and my friend just screamed, "Oh shit, I saw something!" and ran out of the woods.
Poor little furry thing. I've never seen one close up before. What are we gonna do? Can't just leave it here. Well, I was watching. Know what I saw?
It's alive! I love experiences like that. It reminds me a lot of when I was in Boy Scouts, and I bonded a lot with the fellow scouts through like canoe trips down the Delaware River, or like summer camping trips, or even just like encountering animals in the wild, like seeing deer or even bears on occasion, and just figuring out how to handle it, like storing the food in like a high above tree so they can't reach it. It's it really makes you feel more connected to the world when you have these experiences versus just trying to go at your own or trying to force your way with stuff. And it's nice that when we see this part of Salute Your Shorts, that we're reminded of such fond memories that we've also collected along the way through our lives.
Yeah, it almost had sort of a Stand By Me vibe to it, this episode.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially with the girls.
Yeah, oh yeah, it reminded me a lot of the campfire scene in that movie.
We talked into the night. The kind of talk that seemed important until you discover girls.
If I can only have one food for the rest of my life, that's easy. Pass.
Wagon Train's a really cool show, but did you ever notice that they never get anywhere?
What the hell is Goofy?
I've been fortunate enough to have some similar friend experiences when we were kids, running around the neighborhood at night. But also, each year, a group of my friends has been able to luckily get together once every summer, basically, and stay at the lake by here in Ohio, and just spend the weekend, whatever, just hanging out and been lucky to have that. So.
That's awesome. So moving on with the story. Dawn arises and the girls are packing their things to leave the cave. Just before they exit, though, Zizi says goodbye to the cow skull, praising it for bringing the girls good luck last night. Zizi further examines the skull to find out it wasn't a real skull at all, but instead, a cheap souvenir made in Korea. Go figure. Dina lends Telly her fan as a token of their friendship, and the three head back to the center of camp. Upon crossing the paths of the boys, who are picking up trash with various styles of underwear on their heads, the girls suggest to the boys they should learn to get along with each other and that they formed their own secret society themselves, the Clan of the Cave Girls. Budnick grunts as he returns to picking up trash with a pole, and the trio of girls run back to their bunks screaming with joy and glee. End of the episode. So our final discussion before we cut to commercial break. How do you all feel about the contrast between how the boys and the girls handled the meaning of the cursed skull throughout this episode?
I think the guys, they were just naive about it. Like, they were bored and they were going for the excitement. They weren't thinking about the consequences. The girls, on the other hand, because they thought it through, it ended up bringing them good luck because they were prepared for anything from it.
I also feel it helped them realize what's important in their lives as bunkmates, because when we see them in the beginning, they're just bickering over the tiniest of things and how each of their quirks are getting on their nerves. But when they take themselves out of that environment and there's some harm done to the group, they realize that they're like a clan and they come together to help each other, and through support and first aid and just telling stories to really realize that what they have is special and shouldn't be taken for granted. And it was a great instance where they got removed from the picture frame, as they say, to see the big picture overall.
Yeah, it made them see just how close they really were and how much their friendship really did mean to each other, because their friendship was always there, but they had taken it for granted in every other episode.
Yeah, so this was a good character development moment for all of them by this time in the series.
And it made me really like all three of them. Like, I always loved Telly from the get-go, but this episode gave me a newfound appreciation for both Dina and Zizi.
Yeah, there's more depth to them than being a stuck-up rich girl and a sports enthusiast.
Yeah.
Alex?
Something that I don't really have much to add to the question, but as an aside, I wish that instead of it being from Korea, I wish it was from Sardau's Magic Mansion.
Yeah, that would have been the ultimate crossover, baby. I mean, if there's anyone who knows cursed objects, it's Sardau, intentionally or not.
I was hoping it was going to be from IKEA.
I mean, I have an IKEA near me. I haven't seen a cow skull yet, but I'd be damned if I did see one there one day. And it was just like...
Yes, you would.
Yeah, I would. And I would be stuck in an IKEA forever, and it turns into an Are You Afraid of the Dark Tale.
I was going to say, I think the way that it played out, and my response to the question would be, when you're faced with adversity, if you get together, sit down and talk it out, you might get a better result than getting scared and joining a cult. So,
yeah,
I feel like that was a good lesson.
Definitely.
And it was a lesson that I ended up applying into my life many times. So this episode was very pivotal for me.
Don't join cults, folks.
They got good Kool-Aid. They got good Kool-Aid, but you're just gonna end up getting your nose hairs trimmed.
I do like how they how the whole thing is about superstition, kind of, and then the end is kind of suggests like they're creating their own luck,
right,
in different ways, but.
Yeah, it showed that luck is like karma. Luck is created by people. It's not some supernatural force, as far as we know.
Yeah, it's all about the collaboration and cooperation of people working together to solve problems and overcome obstacles that life sends our way, no matter what form they take, not necessarily following a specific black magic instruction book to get rid of it out of your life, which seems like a more superficial, quick fix way of handling it. Well, we're going to do a quick commercial break, and put away our black magic spells and take a breather from having these heavy robes on us. But when we come back, we are going to talk about a little bit of trivia from the show. I know you're sweating in there, Alex.
It's actually not that bad.
Okay. Well, in any case, when we come back, we'll share a little bit of trivia about the show, play a fun Say What segment, and give our episode ratings of The Cursed Skull. So don't go anywhere, Gackoids. We'll be right back.
Attention, Nick campers. Salute your shorts. We'll be right back.
Mr. Sardo, open up!
With April Fool's Day coming up quickly, we decided to take a trip back to Sardo's Magic Mansion and prepare a prank so prolific, nobody could unsee it. Join us, along with our returning special guests, Amethyst and Richard Dumont, as we explore this curio shop of wonders and find a way to escape an alternate dimension before an evil sorceress traps us there with her shadow army. You can find our episode review of Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of the Super Specs, only here on Patreon.
Attention, Nick campers. We now return to Salute Your Shorts.
And we're back. So in case you forgot what's going on, we're talking about Salute Your Shorts, The Cursed Skull. And we're going to share a little bit of trivia for you that we found on IMDb. Apparently, the cave that the girls go into was actually a booth from a nearby flea market. And all of the quote-unquote junk that was in there was merchandise sold by the occupants of the booth. The scenes with the girls were filmed during the week when the flea market wasn't open. And I'm pretty sure if that is true, that happened after it was used as the Batcave in 1960s Batman.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the cave was just used for the Batmobile to come in and out of, which they only did a couple of times and just used the same stock footage over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, the real thing was in a sound booth somewhere.
Yeah. I'm actually curious how deep and how tall that cave is, because it looks rather cramped when they first enter it, but once they get into the deep area with the campfire, it feels a lot more spacious because they're able to stand up without too much trouble. It's also worth mentioning that there are 2 deleted scenes from this episode that hasn't been aired. The first has the boys admitting that the skull, admiring the skull, but Danny Cooksey accidentally flung the skull up too high and one of the horns sliced Michael Bauer. Bauer then had to be taken to the hospital to get stitched up, so this scene was deleted. The other deleted scene shows Budnick ordering Pinsky, Sponge, and Donkey Lips to cover themselves with mud and gargle pudding in their mouth, which, I mean, if you put 2 and 2 together, that probably had to be deleted because of unintended interpretations there. But Pinsky mentions the night before, Budnick opens the pillowcase and discovers the girls took the skull and replaced it with a melon. So even though it was supposedly raining outside, as one final trivia tidbit, when the boys walk back to the bunk, they are completely dry as Ugg comes down to confront them. So what do you guys give for the rating of this episode on the Splat Attack scale?
I personally would give it probably a 9. To me, it was almost perfect. And it's one that really left such a lasting impact on me for that final scene alone. It was the only one where for days afterwards I was thinking of, wow, they really showed the authoritative figure doing physical harm to his campers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just liked how it had a much darker tone than the rest of the episodes, and it was dark in a cartoony way, the way Zeke the plumber was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would personally give it a 9. I thought it was one of the better episodes.
Well, we don't actually have numbers on our Splat Attack scale, so would you translate that to like an A, a B, an S, double S, which goes above an A?
An S is above an A.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would give it an S.
Okay, splatterific then.
Andrew?
Yeah, I really like this episode. I love the parallel stories going on at the same time and kind of ending in opposite directions. I really like the even though it feels maybe a little cheesy, I really like the final scene of the girls talking to each other in the cave. It just feels like something that maybe isn't shown that often, I guess. Just like girls talking, like in a similar scene that boys would normally be set in, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess my only like slight complaint, really, a couple complaints, is it could always use more UGG.
Yeah.
But also, there weren't many like amazing lines. I didn't feel like ones that I just cracked up at or anything. But I still love this episode, and I would give it an S. Splatterific. I think it's definitely, it's in contention for me in the top 5 of this season. Maybe it isn't like a all-time classic Nickelodeon episode that you like immediately think of, but I think it's very good. Underrated.
Well said and well rated. Yeah.
Justin?
I'm gonna give it a Splatisfactory. I like it as an episode, and I enjoyed rewatching it today. But even to this day, it feels like connected to the Treasure of Sarah Madre for me. So I consider it like a 45 record. Like, it's the B-side to a really good song. I like it, but it's like not the song. Like it since they're so linked in my mind, I like that one a lot more. That kind of takes away how much I like this. But it's a good episode. It's really good. I don't think it's in my top 10 of the series. I tend to lean more towards season 1 anyway, but it's a really good episode. It's fun to watch. I can't really take anything away from it. It's just not in my top tier.
That's fair.
Yep.
Was it the only episode where they showed any blood? I can't recall any. Between Ugg's nose and Dina's leg, I can't recall any episode we saw any blood.
Unless you count the bloodiness on Zeke the Plumber's nose when it was taped. That's all I can think of.
But that was rubber.
Yeah, it could have been synthetic blood. Alex?
All right, so for me, I absolutely love this episode. This is one of the handful that I remembered purely from memory as a kid. There's a handful. There's probably about 3 or 4 that I remember very, very much the entire storyline for the episode from when I first saw it again as an adult and since I was a kid. I remembered a few jokes from some of the other episodes, a few memorable visuals, but this was up there with one of my favorites that I recall the main story for. Memorable lines have never really been something that's been a big thing for me, and the UGG dispensing quote-unquote justice on the kids, that never really bothered me as a kid either, and I'm maybe a terrible person, but I still get the idea of so life's a boomerang. Whatever you throw out at people, you're going to get back at you tenfold, and so that always has resonated well with me. So I kind of like that. I like it for how twisted that is. But I really, really loved the pathos. I loved the feeling of this episode. It was a feeling of dread, but also at the same time with a fun, mischievous style to it. It never felt malicious, at least as far as the curse was concerned. But I really, really, really love the message of this. Yes, it's 92. Yes, it's a little cheesy and hokey, but I was a kid when this came out, and I had never really seen a show talk about addressing your issues, your problems by talking them out. Because, I mean, we watch Nickelodeon. We've seen issues solved with pies in the face and stealing things and getting into fights and all these ridiculous manner to just escalate it for drama's sake. I've never seen an episode up to this point where the climax of the story is just talking and just being real with each other. And that is, like I said earlier, that is a lesson that I carried with me for the rest of my life. And at that age, again, I had a terrible temper, and that started to shift things for me. In a way, this episode did very much change my mindset and change the way I lived my life, just with that philosophy of alone of talk out your problems. And just for that alone and the resonance that it has had with me, I give this a triple S.
Wow. Splatceptional, amazing. We really have a wide gamut of grades for this one. That's like a Splat Attack first. And you'll be even more surprised with the grade I give this one. So I'm a big Salute Your Shorts fan. I mean, we all are. That's why we're here. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the ones I remember from childhood when I first saw it airing, even though I was only like 4 or 5, somewhere around there. And what I appreciate about it is that even though I didn't really understand the dark undertones that was going on back then as a young kid, I appreciate the sense of friendship and camaraderie that was going on through the episodes, much like how Alex appreciates it and how it shaped his life growing up. I always resonated with Zizi for her kind, gentle nature. And I feel this is one of those episodes, even though it's more of like a group developmental thing with all 3 characters together in the cave, her character shines for me in this one, where she kind of gives the lore to everybody. She's, being cautious, telling everyone the consequences of not taking this seriously, but also is willing to have fun and not be like the bearer of bad news through all of this. She's trying to help everyone. She's very supportive, and she's very friendly and concerned about everyone's well-being here too. So for me, as one of my favorite characters of this series, this is one of the higher tiered episodes in my personal favorites list. Maybe not top 5, but definitely top 10 as a result. I enjoyed the story well enough, and I appreciate the cursed skull being like the cursed object that was having this lingering, imposing threat from behind the scenes, not really doing anything, but affecting people nonetheless through their daily camp activities. And it reminded me a lot of like how there are other invisible forces in other shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark with Zebo, where you don't quite see them directly or even just like a split second, but you see how they affect the characters who are wrestling with their moral issues and their interactions with them.
Yeah, that's what's great when it leaves it up more to the imagination, and then because your mind can make up millions of images that the screen can only make so many of.
Right, and because you don't see the literal interpretation, your mind fills in the gaps, and you might get a different perception than other people, which sparks conversations, and I appreciate moments like that in life. Overall, I love the contrast of the 2 different groups handling the skull differently. I like how there's like darker tones similar to Zeke the Plumber or Sarah Madre mixed with some lightheartedness. I definitely believe there needs to be more UGG, and I was very grossed out by the whole nose hair prank thing. Like, I would never go even near my own nose and try and snip nose hairs unless they're like sticking out. Yeah. So with all that being said in the gags, I'm going to give it a Splatcellent, which is an A. All right. Well, that was a pretty fun episode review, guys. But before we go, we're going to play a round of Say What, which is one of our patented Splat Attack segments. Roll the jingle.
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say
what?
That's my hair. Whoa! Sorry, I'm like sitting on 5 pillows now on a broken chair, and I almost fell into my green screen. Gotta stick it out. Okay, so for Say What, all you Gackoids are pretty familiar with this segment by now, but for all our guests, basically what we're going to do is I'm going to list off a bunch of quotes that I noted from this episode, and you'll buzz in to name who said it. And it's like 2 points per person for this game, and whoever gets the most at the end of the game wins bragging rights. Maybe I'll even send you some Salute Your Shorts stickers too, because I still have plenty left from my Brett Wilson art store. So starting off, just raise your hand, make a noise, whatever in the screen so I know that it's you. Or if you're Zoom savvy, you can use like the little hand raise icon in the dashboard below. So first quote, hands on your buzzers. So wait a second, guys. When we had fish sticks the other night, I could have eaten a fish that ate a worm. That ate Elvis? Oh, it was a tie. It was a tie between Dan and Justin.
I think Justin was a little faster.
Okay, Justin.
That's my main guy there, Donkey Lips.
And you would be correct for 2 points.
So wait a second, guys. When we had fish sticks the other night, I could have eaten a fish that ate a worm. that ate Elvis?
I remember that scene, the initial scene where they're talking about hot dogs, and they just kind of gloss over it. I remember asking my mom what was in hot dogs, because until that point, I never thought there was anything up with hot dogs. I just thought they were in the meat aisle, they're meat. Never questioned what was in them. And that was a life-changing moment.
You would be surprised how many animal parts are smushed into there. And I just had a hot dog tonight.
I still eat them, but it's different once you know. I can't enjoy them the same way that I did. They took that from me. Right?
Isn't it all like the facial scraps? The scraps that come out when they cut the face open?
Yeah. Close your eyes if you don't want to hear about that and you love hot dogs.
There's a lot of everything. They use the meat, but it's pretty much whatever.
Yeah.
I always think of The Great Outdoors, the movie The Great Outdoors with John Candy and Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah,
lips and assholes.
Hands on your buzzers, guys, for the next one. I found it at the Sacred Caves. I've always wanted a mammal skull nailed to my wall. That was Andrew.
Budnick?
Budnick is correct. 2 points for you.
I found it at the Sacred Caves. Always wanted a mammal skull nailed to my wall.
Quote number 3. Now it's getting interesting. You know, that's the problem with girls. At every camp that I've ever been to, you're always fighting with each other. You just can't get along. Oh, that was Alex.
Poor Daniel, he's trying. Pinsky.
Pinsky is correct. Alex.
You know, that's the problem with girls. In every camp that I've ever been to, you're always fighting with each other. You just don't know how to get along.
3-way tie. 2-2-2 so far.
Come on, Dan. Get in there.
Yeah, be loud and be proud. Okay, quote number 4. Who said it? Keep working, girls. Just here to brighten up your day. Chuckles, lamp humor. Dan.
Is that Budnick?
That is not Budnick. Oh, Justin.
It was Ugg.
That was Ugg when he was fixing the light fixture.
Keep working, girls. Just here to brighten up your day. Lamp humor.
That was my favorite line in the whole episode because he had to explain that it was lamp humor.
Yeah, because apparently there's a whole subgenre of comedy dedicated to the lamps, light bulbs, and fixtures. Quote 5. Who said it? Oh, and you believe in the Easter Bunny, too. Oh, look, it's the Boogeyman. Oogie, boogie, boogie, whoa! Andrew.
Telly.
That was Telly when she slipped and fell with her lunch tray.
Oh, and you believe in the Easter Bunny, too. Oh, look, it's the Boogeyman. Oogie, oogie, wow!
That was a good moment.
Slip.
Yeah, it was. Like, very graceful. Back on her back. Yeah. All right, guys, it's getting tough. 2 more quotes to go. Who's going to get it? Quote 6. Who said it? I told you, superstitions are silly. This is the 20th century. Oh, Dan.
Sponge.
That is Sponge. You're finally on the board, man.
I told you, superstitions are silly. This is the 20th century.
Oh, man, this is going to be gruesome. Here's the final one for 2 points. We return the skull, O mighty spirits. Please release us from the curse. And have a nice day. Now let's go. 2 people said this one.
Go ahead, Dan. You were first.
Dina and Zizi.
Dina and Zizi is correct. You got both of them. 2 points. Wow. 3-way tie between Justin, Dan, and Alex. I think we need to extend this somehow. Okay. So
I do have a quote that I thought was my favorite of the episode.
Okay. Did we?
Locked and
we
loaded.
didn't say it yet?
No.
Do you want to mention it?
Yeah. I am the Skull Master of the Galaxy.
Budnick?
Got it. Yep.
I love that, yeah.
I am the Skull Master of the Galaxy.
Well, I guess I'm playing now. All right, well, we're going to make things interesting because we've done this before on Splat Attack, but we're going to go into the lightning round. So, Alex, I want you to mention this one because you're not part of the 3-way tie. Make up whatever you want for the lightning round so that people can buzz in and break the tie. Okay, so this is for Justin, Dan, and Andrew.
All right. 2 people. Anyone seen Ugg? I saw him running in his underwear looking for a 4-leaf clover, and then a bee stung him in the butt.
No, one of them.
Daniel?
Was it Sponge?
It was not Sponge. Justin?
Is it Telly and Dina?
One was Telly, so half a point for you, but it was not Dina.
Well, I got the other one is Donkey Lips.
Yes, it was Donkey Lips, so half a point for Andrew.
Hey, no one's seen Ugg.
I saw him running in his underwear looking for a 4-leaf clover, and then a bee stung him in the butt.
Did Justin get half too?
No, he guessed Sponge, and Sponge wasn't in it.
Okay.
So it's between Andrew and Justin now?
Yep.
All right. All right, one more. Also, 2-person.
Although if it's half a point, we should give them 1 point, not 0.5.
Okay. All right, here we go. Next one. Echo, save the whales. Will you shut up? Justin was first.
Okay, is that ZZ and Dina?
It was ZZ, but it was not Dina.
1 point for that.
Guess it was Telly.
It was Telly.
Yeah.
Hello? Echo. Save the whales! Will you be quiet? What? You don't want to save the whales?
Hey there, Gackoids. We're pausing real quick for a very important correction of say what. So it turns out when we looked at the footage during the editing phase of this, we realized that Dina did say, will you shut up, or rather, will you be quiet? And because this quote was misquoted from IMDb in the spur of the moment during the recording, we want to honor Justin's answer and give him the points that he is due, therefore affecting the outcome of the tie and thus securing him the victory instead of Andrew. We apologize for the inconvenience and any hurt feelings that are involved, but we just want to be true to the scoring system of this segment. And now, back to the show. That was amazing, guys. I never had a tie go on that far before on Say What. Awesome, guys.
Good game.
I think we're going to wrap this up now. So, closing question for all you Gackoids. What unlucky experiences have you encountered in life, and how did you overcome them? Let us know via email at splatattack2021@gmail.com. You can also interact with us on Instagram, on YouTube, at Splat Attack Podcast. Or leave us a comment on this post down below whenever you see it on social media. We're on Patreon, we're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Basically interact with us wherever you see fit. And if you'd like to Splatify your life with some more merch from our Nostalgic Slime Tank, check out our bonfire page because it's still up and running. Even though we didn't really do much with it during Season 3, we're definitely trying to push more designs out for Season 4 and get people more interested in showing their support with Splat Attack mug or shirt or anything like that. So if you're interested in those sorts of things, like the one Alex is wearing now, his Team Slimester shirt, head on over to bonfire.com/store/SplatAttack store to check out some of the merch we have. And if you don't like anything we have, let us know what you want and we'll make it for you. So now that we've finally broken the curse of the skull, we're all finally able to truly test our might and magic when we visit an old friend or two at Sardo's Magic Mansion in our upcoming episode review of Are You Afraid of the Darks? The Tale of the Super Specs. What kinds of scary sights will we see? Tune in next time to witness the horrors concealed in Sardo's dark spellbook. Any final thoughts, Alex, Andrew, Justin, or Dan?
So, is everybody feeling lucky tonight?
Feeling more lucky now that we got rid of the skull.
Yeah. No, it's right behind you.
Oh yeah. Oops. I thought I got rid of that. Alex, what you got there on?
I'm getting my super specs ready for the next episode.
Yeah, I mean, I wore those for our Sardo's retrospective, so it's going to be a lot of fun to see Richard Dumont again and our old buddy Amethyst from our Stick Stickly episode. See what kinds of things we see in another dimension.
And yes, these are Novel Vision.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we go?
Thank you guys for having me. I thought it was a great episode. I loved this episode. I was happy to talk about it. Yeah, it was great. You can, if you want to hear me, I'm on Big Orange Couch podcast. You can also, I have a science fiction book series out called Space Junk that you can, if you, nice. Awesome.
I came prepared.
If you search Space Junk book on Google or Amazon or Etsy, you'll find it.
Oh, you do the Big Orange podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to the favorite Are You Afraid of the Dark Scenes episode recently.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they do a lot of great topics.
Justin, anything you want to plug?
I don't have anything to plug. I just want to plug everything that everybody else here is doing because it's helping all of us have a community to enjoy this stuff. So anybody else that has stuff going on, I encourage you all to check it out. It's all top tier, excellent stuff, and it's keeping things alive and it's keeping it growing for other generations to appreciate this stuff too.
Appreciate it.
Indeed.
If you want to check out my podcast, it's audio. It's called Vanilla Weiss and the Nostalgic Nerds. It's on Anchor app, Spotify, Apple, where I generally interview comedians or I'll interview public figures from like the 80s and 90s. And we normally talk about what our upbringings were like, what were some of our favorite entertainment growing up, and how can we follow some of the rest of you guys on social media?
You can follow Andrew's podcast at Big Orange Couch on Instagram or Twitter. I know that's where they're most active. Justin, I tend to talk with him over Instagram at Justin for All. Pretty fun guy. Met him through Big Orange Couch, actually. Alex is at True 90s Nickelodeon. That's where his personal Instagram page is, and I'm at Retropod, which used to be at Brett Wilson Art. And of course, Dan has the nostalgic Vanilla Weiss and the Nostalgic Nerds podcast, which you can find on Anchor. And one last plug that I'd like to mention before we go, because I don't mention this too often. I still have a back stock of stickers from my Brett Wilson store after it shut down. So if anyone's interested in getting some Salute Your Shorts stickers, I have a bunch of characters. I've had like the Shorts Up the Pole. At this point, name your price. I just need to get rid of my inventory. So if anyone wants any, hit me up via DM on Instagram and I'll hook you up. And also, I'd like to share this because Justin actually got one of my posters from a couple of years back, the Salute Your Shorts ones I mentioned. Here's an unreleased one of the Cursed Skull, because I originally had plans to do all of the season 2 episodes as posters, but because life got so busy and I just didn't get a chance to finish all the episodes, I did manage to finish a few of them, and the Cursed Skull was one of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you. So for you Gakoids and of course our guests, you get to see this for the first time today.
Yeah, spread the love. I mean, I'm sure most of us, most of you Gakoids have already been listening and have supported the Big Orange Couch for quite a while. If you haven't, go check them out. Spread the love to the other 90s Nickelodeon community, and obviously spread some love over to Dan as well. Big thank you to all of you guys for coming out here. It's always a pleasure to get to talk with you guys, and it was a pleasure meeting you, Dan. I've not really had the opportunity to say so thank you for being here.
The pleasure was all mine. I'm really honored that you guys had me partake in this. I'm a huge 90s, especially Salute Your Shorts enthusiast. And I was really honored that you guys had me on this.
Yeah, we're welcome to have you. We'll see if we can have you on again for like You Can't Do That in Television or anything else that speaks to you. I mean, we're just here like Big Orange Couch and any other 90s podcast does, is to continue to build that tight-knit community, because we all understand Nickelodeon better than anyone else, and we just like to share memories with each other.
I actually interviewed Abby Haggard from You Can't Do That on Television in one of my episodes.
Oh, that's pretty cool. We have yet to cover that on our podcast, but we'll have to see where we can fit that in a later season.
Yeah. It's on the radar for sure.
Yeah, we've had a few requests for it as well. All right, guys, let's put out this fire and head back to the bunks. Because I'm getting sick of being in this dang cave full of junk, aren't you? Let's get rid of this made in Korea skull and head home with the lessons we've learned today. Alex, will you drain the slime tank for us, please? I've got to do a quick sage burning ritual to clear the bad energy out of here before anyone else gets hurt.
Aye, co-captain. But watch out for Ugg. He may have a bone to pick with you after that, nose hair stunt.
Yeah, I'd imagine. So I think I'm going to have to sneak out to camp using, the cloak that you brought in today and make sure he doesn't notice.
I'll get it for you.
As I swap the skull out with a cassava melon and then later eat it. Splat you later, Gackoids, and thanks again for joining us for this episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
I reckon it's time for me to go. I'm glad that's over. Now for a peaceful night's sleep.
Well, that does it for now.
Yeah, we gotta catch a train.
Since I'm going home, you can have my arts and crafts project. It's a tweezer holder.
Alright, guys. Let's go fun.
How long have we been away?
See you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
It's the skull. It's not the skull. Why do you guys always believe this mumbo jumbo? See, I just stepped under the ladder. No bad luck, and I'll do it again.
Well, maybe Sponge is right. I mean, it's dumb to believe that all this bad stuff happened because of a stupid skull.
Right, let's just go, guys.
Yeah, come on. Hello? Echo. Save the whales! Will you be quiet? What? You don't want to save the whales?
No, we just don't want to hear your voice.